Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Real Talk with Ellasin, and I am Ellison. Listen, hey, don't be selfish. If you are on Facebook, please like. If you are on YouTube, please subscribe and make sure you share it out so we can educate the community as a whole. Because on Real Talk, we talk about real issues that benefit and educate the community. And with that being said, we're about to get this show started. Hey everyone, welcome to Real Talk with Ellison, and I am IamEllasin. And today we are continuing to discuss Black history with a twist. And today we are talking about the intergenerational impact of slavery. So I'm going to start off with saying, before I bring on my lovely co-host, I'm going to start off by saying our history. And when I say our history, I'm not talking about just the Black history, but I'm talking about American history. And I wanted to say that it is filled with so many different oppressions and genocides and a lot of different situations that happen that is hard for people to discuss. And all of these have caused some kind of trauma, right? And the reason why I'm saying American history, because if you think about it, right, there's academic research that has been performed that has led to much discussion concerning intergenerational trauma and the impact it has on Native Americans, the Holocaust survivors, and unfortunately, it does affect African American culture, but it's been tragically ignored. It's been ignored when it comes to the African American culture, despite any research that has been proven that intergenerational trauma unconsciously impacts African Americans. The trauma can be passed down from generations to generations and to future generations if we're not careful. And this way, it will provide yet another obstacle. So it's now generations after generations of trauma. And before I go any further, I want to go ahead and bring on my lovely co host, my sister, Jaquita Garrett. Welcome, ma'am.
Hello, hello. Thanks for
How are
having me
you?
again.
It's good to see you again. It's always a pleasure being here with you.
Yes, ma'am. Same here.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about intergenerational impact, right? The trauma that it has on generations to come and can if we don't do something about it. And I was bringing up, I wanted to bring up a statistic or something that the psychologist said. It's the American the
Mhm.
American Psychological Association, and it's defined as a phenomenon in which the descendants of a person who has experienced terrifying events show adverse emotions and behavioral reactions to events that are similar to those of the person himself or herself. That's what the American Psychological Association said that intergenerational impact trauma is. So basically, what it's saying is that I can almost feel the same thing that the individual is going through. And they were saying for Black Americans who descended from enslaved people, the trauma that was experienced by the ancestors has been passed down through each generation. Ouch.
Yeah,
The trauma has been passed down through each generation?
each generation. I
Yeah.
agree. It seems like that is correct.
It seems like that is correct. And I wanted to say that the Black children experience discrimination at a rate ranging from 9.69% in 2018, bring it to 2020, it increased to 15.4%. So now we're being exposed even more to this discrimination as a
Agree.
people.
I agree 100%. We are being exposed even more so. I would say even me myself, maybe in the early 90s, maybe around 1989. I've experienced some racism. I'm only the age of 44. I know I look young. Thanks, 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 thanks. However, I do recall moments where I've experienced some form of racism. I kind of grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and in our culture, it's African American. It was pretty much Black. I think we went to school with one Caucasian kid, and of course, it seemed as if he was, you know, in a world that didn't like keep like I'll give you an example. Like, so when I first saw him for the first time, I didn't even know what Caucasian was because I was so
Mhm.
used to being in an environment that exists of just Black people coming up in New Orleans, Louisiana. And if I've never been out of that particular area to see other people that weren't of color. So when he came to the school and they enrolled him, everybody was looking around like, who are you and where did you come from? And
Right.
no one, I didn't recall anyone being mean to him, bullying him. But unfortunately, I'm just piggybacking off what you said because when I was 10, I moved to Covington, Louisiana, and the whole dynamic was different. So it was
Mhm.
like three Black kids in a classroom with 20 white kids. So it was like everything shifted.
Right.
And then at that moment, that's when I began to experience racism and what that felt like.
Yes, yes. I think that is so important that you bring up that because, with this being Black history, we are definitely, talking about the us as a community, the impact of racism, but it can be either way, right? It doesn't
Yep.
necessarily just have to be you know, Black people, white people, but we all experience racism. So the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that intergenerational trauma can cause, and I want to talk about a few things because sometimes people don't understand their why as to their behaviors, their why as to feelings that they have. And it can be tied back to perhaps this kind of trauma. So we wonder
Yes.
why we may have like self-esteem, for instance, right? So
Mm-hmm.
self-esteem, right, is a book that Timothy Leary had written, and it talked about the forgotten Negro. And in that
Mm-hmm.
book, he talks about one of the after effects of slavery that has been observed is vacant self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Vacant self-esteem. So now, because of slavery and it's passing down, if I have low self-esteem, right? How
Mm-hmm.
can I teach my child to have something I don't have? So
That's
when
it.
I read that, I was thinking about how powerful that is because that can include feelings of hopelessness and depression.
Yes.
Vacant self-esteem.
Vacant
That blew me
self-esteem.
away.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one, vacant self-esteem. And I agree with you as well. Um, I think a lot of stuff that we're experiencing, even from previous decades to current decades, it's still something that's ongoing with vacant self-esteem.
Mhm.
It does lead like the sadness, the depression, and your kids, they see which they a lot of times they mock what they see
Yeah.
when they're younger. And then that kind of leads them into having the same self esteem issues as they get older. If you're not teaching them to have good self esteem or feel good about themselves, that tends to happen.
Yes, yes, yeah. So I thought that was, and when I heard vacant self esteem, I was thinking about how much more we lack knowledge that we don't instill in our children because of the
Right.
lack,
Because of the
right?
lack.
So
Mhm.
if I lack self-esteem, if I lack financial education, if I lack all of these things, how can I really teach this to my children. Eric said, when you grow up around people that have low self-esteem, they inherit those behaviors. And our children do inherit our behaviors. That's
Yes.
why it's so important, because with intergenerational trauma, the impact is so great for generations to come, because unless we learn different, right, we don't know any different. So we don't teach any different.
Right. Agreed.
Right. So
Hmm.
yeah. So I think that's important. So why do you think, hey Carolyn, why do you think, what is your outlook on the importance of teaching our children about self-esteem? Well, for one, us learning self-esteem. How about that? And then teaching it to our children.
Right. I think self-esteem comes from within. It's self-taught. If someone did not teach you the skills to have good self-esteem about yourself, then it's something that you have to instill within yourself.
Mhm.
Um, I'll give an example. I think that having a parent that has confidence, the courage, and believes in themselves, then of course it leans over into their children. Sometimes, though, us as kids, when we're younger, we find confidence within ourselves
Mhm.
that we use to move forward. So, in some areas, because think about it, in every area, we're not going to have like positive self-esteem. It's something that you learn, it's something that you adapt to, it's something that you see, and then you get this feeling of feeling good about yourself. That's what
Right.
helps encourage the self-esteem. So if the parent doesn't have it, when we're younger, at some point when we understand how life goes, we have to start instilling it in ourselves, build
Yeah.
our own confidence. So sometimes if you can't get it at home, then somewhere along the way you have to build it within yourself as well.
Yeah. So, and I mean, that's easier said than done if we're in an
Mm-hmm.
environment and there's nowhere to go. You got to almost want different. And
You got to.
with you bringing that up, there was these words that I looked up and I thought it was very interesting, and it was called learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. And I'm
Yep.
going, my God, learned helplessness. And this is the perception that no matter what a person does, they can't change their situation or condition. So we
Right.
learn this behavior,
Yep.
right? It's called, we learn helplessness. We learn to be helpless. We learn to feel like, I was brought up in this situation. I was raised in this situation. Mama was on welfare. Daddy was on welfare. Grandma lived in a trailer park. This is my lot in life. Right. So I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at that and I said, how interesting is that as a community? Because many times I hear people say, well, why don't they just get out of there? Why don't they just get out of their situation? Or why don't they
Mm,
just get out of the neighborhood? Or why don't they just want to do better?
right.
But I learned, you guys, hashtag learned helplessness. Like,
Learned
so
helplessness.
if I learned helplessness and you telling me to get up out of here, but not providing no resources, it's going to be difficult.
Yep.
It
So
is
I
going to be difficult.
It's gonna definitely be difficult because it's like you said to me a minute ago, it's easier said than done. Some
Hmm.
people may not have the tools or the resources to get out of a particular environment that they may be stuck in. Some people may have an out, but they're so deep into their own minds, their
Hmm.
cognitive thoughts, that they can't come out of it when they really actually may possibly have a way out of it. I call it developmental arrest.
Well, developmental arrest, learn helplessness,
Yep.
mental bondage, whatever
Yep.
words you want to use, these people that learn this behavior,
Yep.
it's almost like they're frustrated, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then they stop because of the frustration. They stop trying to change their circumstances because
Yep.
I'm stuck here in, what did you call it? The what?
Developmental arrest.
Developmental arrest, mental
Mhm.
bondage, learn
Yep.
helplessness. I ain't getting out of this situation.
No room to grow. And see, you're instilling that in your brain. So at the same time, it's like, where is growth? If you're
Yes.
allowing yourself to be stagnated in a certain situation. Positive
Yes,
self-talk. Sometimes you have to talk yourself out of certain situations. Like if you keep saying I can, I can, I can, I can't, then that becomes a part of you. Or it
that's right.
becomes like if like in the slavery days, they would tell them, hey, you not nothing, you're never gonna be nothing. This is it for you.
Right. Yes,
So that's a part of it as well. And at that point, some people within their minds is like, okay, this is where I am. I'm stuck here. This is
yep,
what my life is meant to be.
that's right.
Mhm.
That's right. So it's funny that you say that, right? Because it's like I'm just stuck here. This is what my life is meant to be. But when what a person what can lead to learned helplessness is, we have to look at the impact. In order for me to start speaking positive into
Yep.
into my mindset, I have to identify what was negative. So is it perhaps the stories that are told from the our ancestors, or is it we experience racism, or friends that have that experience racism, and then sometimes even witnessing, or being a product of racial threats, different things like that can also cause us to learn helplessness, because it's like no matter what, I can't get away from racism. My grandmother been through it, my great grandmother been through it, I'm still going through it. And even if we so Quita, even if we take out the ancestors, right? Look
Mhm.
at the news right now.
Mhm.
Look at the media.
The media.
How much you guys, if y'all watching, y'all tuning in to Real Talk with Ellasin, thank you for that. Y'all talk back to me. How much does the news media just feed into our mental
Yep.
capacity about black people, and as far as being barbarians almost?
Mhm.
It's like the news, every time you turn around, is like black people are the only people that have any kind of negative outlook on everything. We're just news about poverty, news about killings, murders, you name it. It's just the news bombards us with this. So again, this is all streaming that learned helplessness into us, because it's like, how can I get ahead? Because I'm associated. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, well, I guess as we get older though, sometimes even though the media is feeding us with so much negativity, at some point, like you said, you have to identify within yourself, when is enough enough? When am I going to stop drowning in my sorrows about being African American, being stuck? Our ancestors went through this, our ancestors went through that. At
Mm-hmm.
some point, you as a person, whoever, has to take a stand and say enough is enough. I have to
Yes.
try something different. So let's say if you're at the bottom of your thoughts and you didn't hit rock bottom in that situation, then there's nowhere but up from there. It's
That's
time
right.
to think of something different. If you've
Yes.
tried this and it's been negative and it has not been helpful, then it's time to try something different. So
Right.
social
Try
media can take over your mind. It can be overwhelming. It can have you wrapped in bondage. But as you said, the key word was to be able to identify.
identify.
Identify. Hmm.
Take a break from the news. Take
Yes.
a break from the media. Take a break. Hey,
Hmm.
Sharnetta.
Hey,
Sharnetta
Shanetta.
said, hey, Ellison and Jaquita, images and messages communicated in the media definitely impact consciously and subconsciously. And you know what? She is so right, because,
So right
again, if you keep getting what you feed yourself, oftentimes is what you become.
is
We
what you
have to
become.
learn to protect our gates, right? Our
Yep.
eye gates, our ear gates, our nose, our mouth gates. And if we're constantly feeding ourselves with this negativity, how in the world can we reframe our mindset to start talking positive, especially if
Right.
we learned helplessness and now that's all we see?
Right. I agree
Yeah.
100%. And yes, we do agree with you, Shanetta. Absolutely 100%. Um, so media is taking over, and look, I think that's part of what they want us to do, right? They want us to
Mhm.
stay imprisoned in our own minds with situations of the shootings, the killings, and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, everywhere in society in the world, of all races and ethnicity, Caucasians kill Caucasians, African
Yeah.
American kills African Americans, Mexicans
Yep.
kill Mexicans. It's all over, but to the media, it's like it's just solely us, and
They're
that's just part
pinpointing.
of keep. I'm sorry,
I said they're pinpointing a certain
pinpointing it
culture.
directly to us. So
Mhm.
that's just a way for us to continue to be down on ourselves and thinking that we're not worthy. But it's time for us to wake up.
Wake up. So, with that being said, right, enslavement did not end with the Emancipation Proclamation. It did not
Mm,
end there. And we was talking about this a little bit earlier with the mental bondage that we're in. And I keep forgetting what you said. You said what you say? Something.
developmental arrest.
Developmental arrest is what you said. So, developmental arrest, the impact on the sense of self and self worth. This is
Hmm.
what we're seeing. It's just impacted our sense of self and self worth. I was looking at something from 4 years ago where the lady spoke to Congress, where the school was teaching her children that that you came from slavery and you're not going to be anything else but that. You're not, no matter what you do, you're
Hmm.
always going to be enslaved. That was 4 years ago. So here we are
Hmm.
today. So how do you now go back and tell that child, your child, that yes, you can be the Barack Obamas, and yes, you can be more than that, when you have schools now arresting, developmental arrest, and putting
Yep.
our children in mental bondage,
Hmm.
impacting their sense of self and self-worth.
Right. Yeah, I agree. That's what it is. The school systems, I don't know. I feel like it's a lot still going on in social media, whether it's school, whether it's in school or whether it's not in school. They had something that hit social media recently. I saw, which does not help the situation of some kids call themselves, it's Black History Month. So of course we're
Yeah.
within Black history, and they did some things where they powdered their faces black.
Yes.
They posted it on social media. That was a
Hmm.
part of it. And I don't know. I just feel like a lot of teachers in this education system, some are for the right, some aren't for the right. I
Yeah.
mean, to tell a child, I don't even know how old the child was,
9.
maybe 9 years old. So how do you, as a parent, take your child from that situation, as you said, and bring
Right.
them into knowing and understanding
Right.
that, hey, this is not the end of the world. That's just them trying to find a way to continue to poison the brain. And
Continue.
unfortunately, fortunately, as a parent, we have to take a hold of a situation. Like when that happened, I'm not sure if the mom went into the school system or not, but that at that
Oh,
point, something should have happened.
oh yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah. She went to the school system. She took it a step further. She went when they didn't do anything, she took it before Congress, and that's how I seen,
that's
the
how you
video
seen it.
on it. But these here's a few things, like having sense of self-worth and having a sense of, who you are. These
Hmm.
are important to consider in order to help the Black community.
Right.
Yes, we are people, we need to help ourselves, but didn't other ethnicities have assistance? Right, other ethnicities had assistance. There needs to be programs developed for the purpose of pouring back into the Black people. A lot of times we lack these programs, we lack assistance in our communities that are pouring back into us as a people. And
Hmm.
again, this is a form of enslavement, right? So these programs are important, and I remember us chatting about it before, about the importance of having these programs in our community, right? So talk
Hmm.
to me a little bit about the programs that you feel are, or why they are necessary for our community.
I think the programs are necessary for our community because um, you want the kids to be surrounded by positive people. You want kids to have mentors to help them through a process. As you and I were talking about earlier, as parents, sometimes, and it could, everybody have their own views. We can overly and become overly like excessive about telling our kids about slavery when maybe we should have like mentors in the community, things like that we don't have. We have,
Right.
I don't know any type of resource that says, hey, slavery is going on, let's solely cover this, we got to keep our kids well covered on it. I mean, we have mentors, but it's for so many different things. But I
Right.
myself do not know of any that's
Yeah.
actually focusing solely on our ancestors and our heritage to keep us going within the community. I think it would be a great thing because as parents, I think we become so fixated on slavery that we can overcompensate informing and educating our kids on slavery,
Yeah.
that we can actually possibly tip them over to become angry as opposed to getting them to understand that, hey, slavery did take place. However, things still aren't fair, but we have to identify positive things so we can move past this situation to be able to grow from here, but not forget where we come from.
Right. It's a balance. And and anybody that know me knows my children, I because I studied Black history in college, I taught them all about Black history.
Mhm,
And they're fine. They're not angry or anything else. Black history is history. So I think it's a balance at how we teach our children, and to what extent we teach our
mhm.
children from a learning perspective, to educate them that they are somebody, not for anger purposes. It's,
Right,
it's not to bring anger or any more discrimination than we have, but just to
right.
educate them like, listen, this is strength. Slavery
Hmm.
means strength. I don't care to say that my ancestors were slaves because I made it because they did.
That's
Right?
it.
So it's that part of it that I think is important, but
Hmm.
the the media shows it as something else, and this is where the anger starts coming from. So I agree, we need to have programs to help not just the Black children but the
Hmm.
community as a whole,
To
because
understand.
everybody needs to understand,
Hmm.
right?
I agree.
So
Hmm.
let's talk about the impact of health. Let's talk about the health of the Black community. um have you ever heard of something called racial battle fatigue? Anybody? Y'all put a thumbs up in the chat if y'all heard of racial battle fatigue. And don't look it up. We're going to Google it either. Put a thumbs up. Y'all heard of it? Racial battle fatigue. Come on, y'all. Talk back to us. I got something to say about this racial battle fatigue. I thought that was interesting. I learned some new stuff today. So,
Well,
racial
educate me,
battle
girl.
fatigue. It's defined as a. I was trying to wait to see if anybody put any thumbs up in there, but nobody did. So, anyway, racial battle fatigue is defined as the social phenomenon in which persons who experience chronic racial discrimination develop psychological and physiological and emotional strain due to excessive amounts of energy expended on race related stressors. And that's
Hmm.
what you just said, Jaquita.
Hmm.
So you spending too much energy on this, right?
Hmm.
Too much energy on it. We're inundated with this. We're fixated. We're putting all our energy into this, right?
Hmm.
So now what does that do to the body when you over fixate on something like this?
It can cause sleep deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
You become so fixated on learning more about um, what's going on with the race, the
Yes.
racism, that you can't sleep, you can't eat, you have a difference of opinion from other people. You start to think what you feel it's just flat out right, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not necessarily right. It brings on anger issues. I mean, you become fixated with it. So
Yeah.
at the same time, it's like you get tunnel vision. Nothing
Yeah.
else matters at this very moment. This is where I want to focus. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be, and I'm in it in time. I'll give you a little example. Like they have the little one of my cousins was talking to me about the ancestry. Am I saying it
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it's the thing where you go in and it's people of all races.
Right.
You get on there, you become so fixated with it. So then I noticed that one of my cousins became so fixated on it. She started dating it back, like going back to see what the census was,
Yeah.
how African Americans lived in the household, how many people was in the household. It's kind of weird because back then, after slavery, it got to where ourselves as African Americans, we bunched up in the house just to
Yeah.
survive. So
Yeah.
she was kind of taking me through some of the
Yeah.
ancestry, the trees and the
Yes.
leaves, and how they'll
Yeah.
give you a leaf and only give you a little, but they do that to get you to keep spending money. So
Yeah.
then you want that little leaf and another leaf, and then it's a fixation.
It
So
is
I've
a
learned some
fixation.
things, which is exciting, but I had to set a boundary to say,
There you go.
mm-mm, I'm gonna drive
Set a
myself
boundary.
nuts if I do that. Mm-hmm.
Right. Set a boundary because you brought up, lack of sleep. It can cause hypertension. It can cause high blood pressure. You think
Mm-hmm.
about constantly watching the news with all the racism, with all the
Mm-hmm.
abuse, with all the murders happening, sleep disturbance, different
Yep.
things like that, anxiety,
Anxiety.
PTSD.
PTSD. I was
It
about
can
to
just
say that it
cause.
causes mental illness.
Yes, it
Mm-hmm.
can cause all of that.
Yep.
And this is why we say, it's best sometimes to monitor how much you are allowing yourself to pull in all of this, and then monitor how much of yourself that you are really researching and digging and digging and digging, because it can cause things to it can hinder your health, and you won't
Okay.
even know it, but it's the point that you are so fixated on what's going on. And research has showed that the young adults age 18 to 28 who experience discrimination were
Mm-hmm.
more likely to experience psychological distress,
Yep.
right? And those are the ones that were being diagnosed with mental illness or
Mm-hmm.
even report excessive drug use. So
Yep.
now we're wondering why you're drinking, why you're smoking, why you angry, why you have mental illness, but it's because you've either experienced discrimination, you've been involved in it too much, it's just too much. And
Right.
we have to be careful. It is too much.
It is too much.
Yes. So as if that wasn't enough to complicate things even matter, right? Our community, we lack certain things in our community, like healthcare. So now if I have a mental illness, if I have a substance use disorder, if I have different kind of things that happen from being in poverty, because my community lacks access to any kind of health benefits or different kind of food markets, we might have Popeye's fried chicken, and we won't have Whole Foods, or different kind of things that can be considered environmental racism.
Right. So even with that being said, I agree with you 100%. It kind of, as we were talking about earlier, poverty-stricken areas, we tend to have things that aren't good for us, right? So in a
Mhm.
poverty-stricken area where it's people that are on SNAP or food stamps, they get
Yeah,
what they can afford, or hey, the two-piece chicken right here is less expensive than me going over here to Applebee's. So
yeah,
sometimes I think, like you said, we're in an environment where they seem like they just want us to fail. So I mean
yeah,
that causes us to have health issues. Like we have a Whole Foods over here, but then we have a Winn Dixie over here. I mean, it just depends on the area that you're placed in and what you can afford. So suburban areas seem to get the better side of things as opposed to the poverty stricken.
yeah. So, with saying that, the environmental racism, it can exacerbate these issues even further, because like you were saying, how come I can't have the fresh vegetables, and how come I can't have, how come we don't have this? How come we have to drive 30, 40 minutes and waste gas just to get, to these different places that are so readily available to other cultures or other neighborhoods? How come we have to live closer to the factories with all, the chemicals? How come we have to live closer to the tracks with all the noise pollution? It's just different things like that can also, again, exasperate the issue of the racism even further. And we as a country have got to become aware and see this, right? We have to become aware. Awareness, guys, hashtag awareness. Hashtag awareness. We have got to become, because what people don't understand is environmental racism, right? It causes a culture to become even more. It can cause a culture to be more violent, because you know what? I don't have, because of my learned helplessness, I don't have, but yet I see you over there. You have. So I want that. So here we go. Here we go with the crime rate going up. Here we go with the crime rate going up, because I want that, but I can't get that because it's not here. Nobody's teaching me any of this stuff like that, right? So
That's right.
we have to develop,
Mm-hmm.
better a better mindset of what's going on in the community in order to
Right.
help the community.
That's right. I agree
Yes,
100%. I agree
yes.
100%. Awareness.
Well, you know what,
Instead of that,
Jaquita, I'm sure glad you don't agree 80%.
I gotta be 100 with my girl. So we stating facts on here. It's real talk, but it's still
That's
factual.
right.
But I do agree with you. I think instead of, like you said, to piggyback off what you said that individual, like sometimes that person will say, well, I want that. I want what that person has. But at the same time, instead of that person sitting there to identify there's
Hmm.
ways of getting it, then they turn to, criminal activity to say, well, I'm mad they have it, so I'm a go get what they have. And I was told I was never gonna be anything, so this time I'm gonna get it.
Mm,
Or having a
yeah.
positive influence to say, if that kid says, Mom, why does my friend Bill live better than me? Then that
Mm,
comes from the mom to say, hey, well, they worked real hard at what they had. It's not what you say, it's pretty much how you say it and what you feed into your kids' brains as well.
right. Right. You know what? And you are so right. We
You
have to,
100% agree with me now?
I 100% agree with you. So you are so right, because historical adversity, right, which includes slavery, sharecropping, race-based exclusion, from health, educational, social, and economical resources, it translates into a social economic disparities. And most of the time it's the Black community that experiences this, right? So the social economic status in turn is linked to mental health, is linked to people's health, is linked to crime, right? Because people who are impoverished, homeless, incarcerated, or have, some kind of substance abuse problem are at higher risk for poor mental health, right? So that's why it's so important as us, as a community. And when I say a community, I'm not just saying Black people, as a community as a whole, to understand, if we want people to do better, we have
Hmm.
to provide resources for them to get better in order to do better. Because
Right.
again, it goes back to the learned helplessness. I don't know any better. And if I try
Right.
to go outside, let's
Hmm.
talk about that part. If I try to go outside, now I got to hear from my community that I may think I'm better. And then I
Yep.
got to hear from that community that says, you ain't good enough. What do I do?
And I feel like at the same time, what should happen is that I think all races or ethnicities should come together to
Hmm.
learn each other's culture. And that way we'll have a better understanding of how everyone's background is developed, as opposed to you just being judgmental because the color of my skin, or you Black, or you the N-word, or without really knowing who I am as a person. But at the end
Right.
of the day, like you said, we all bleed the same blood,
We
red,
all we
you know?
all bleed the same blood. And again, it goes back to, what are we teaching our children? Because if you put a kindergartner in a room, that you put different colors, different cultures, you put them all together, they all going to play and they're all going to hug. It's later on in life where they learning it, and where they learning it from. They learning it from the home. So we have to be careful as a parent, as a community, as a village, because remember we was talking about, it takes a village. We have to be careful in what we're sharing with them, and what can that breed. And we have to
Right.
be careful to let them to know that, understand the person and not the color.
That's
And
it.
that's the problem. We see the color and not the person, like you said.
Hmm.
So that is good. And it's, listen, what I was saying as far as the community, and when crime rate goes up, I wasn't making no excuses. I'm just trying to bring awareness. I'm just
Awareness.
trying to bring awareness of what happens When you have a people and you keep them in a mental bondage, in a learned helpless state, and use your word, Peter, because I forgot it again.
Developmental arrest.
Developmental arrest, right? And this is not a Black person or a Black community problem. It is a people problem. What we are facing right now is a people problem, and we're still separating ourselves, and this is why we're not getting where we need to be as a nation. This is a nation problem. I mean, you think about it, you got churches, like, there are some churches that are diverse, but you got the Black churches, the white churches, you got the Hispanic churches, you got this church, you got this, and you got that. We separate in every area. When do we unify?
I agree 100%. Even in work environments, I really see it.
Oh, yes.
It's so bad. I don't really necessarily think that it's more or less one being prejudiced of the other. It just seems like the norm that, you know, African American attached to African American, Caucasians attached to Caucasians, Mexican attached to Mexicans, no matter what the ethnicity is. It's just what is out there. So if you walk into your office building tomorrow and you really open your eyes, right, there's no such thing as assigned seats, right?
Right.
Not as adults. So it's like, I'm telling the truth though. So it's kind of like you kind of gravitate to this side, gravitate to that side, when we all should just pretty much pull together as a whole and just say, hey, we look a little segregated in here.
Right. Man,
I
I
don't know.
just seen that comment. It says we even separate in cemeteries. So in man's death, yes, in man's death, we are even separated. They're gonna be in for a rude awakening if they get to heaven and find out that it's not gonna be no segregation up in there. Thank
It's
you, Sandra, for
unfortunate.
that comment. Yes, even in
Mhm.
cemeteries. That is
Yep.
so true, even in cemeteries. And I'm glad that you put that out there. Next time you go into the work, or next time you
Um,
go somewhere, next time you go to a social event, see where you gravitate to. So let me tell you, me, because my personality is so different, right? I walk up in the room and walk right over there to the ones that don't look like me, just because I don't
mhm.
I don't like that. I don't like
Yeah,
that.
me
And I
neither.
get looked at so weird
Mhm.
by both.
Mhm.
But it's okay. It's
Right.
okay as I'm comfortable, right?
Right.
So with lack of awareness, and we're talking about bringing awareness to this, with the lack of awareness, it brings lack of understanding, right?
Right.
And having lack of understanding, it impacts the racism, and it's important to design interventions to mitigate these effects, right? We have to have interventions that go against this. There should be support systems in place to provide greater accessibility, as well as tools for stress reduction and stress management. And the reason why that's important is because it is stressful trying to integrate. And I'm going to talk about myself trying to be in a world with a different culture, with white, Hispanic, whatever the case may be. It can be stressful, and it can cause anxiousness because I'm trying to integrate into what is their world, so to speak, and that's the whole thing: your world, my world, and all that other stuff. So yeah, I just think awareness is good. And Shawnetta had brought up a comment, and her comment said, check out the book, Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria? It's by Beverly Tatum, former president of Spelman College. Thank you, Shawnetta, for sharing that book. Why do all Black kids sit together in the cafeteria? And she not lying either. You muted?
I am muted. I said my apologies. I was telling Shawnetta, let me come by and check that book out for a couple of weeks. I know you got it because you went to Spelman. I'm coming to get that book.
Right. So yes, I get that book. If you have grandkids, if you teach kids, get that book, and let's start. We got to start somewhere. And why can't we start right in our own home? Ministry starts in the home. Why can't we start in our own home teaching them how to do it, whether you're black, white, or indifferent, right?
Right.
There's something else I want to talk about too. It's called internalized oppression.
Mm.
internalized oppression. I got some words for y'all on today.
Yes, you do, honey. Get my phone out
In-
and Google this.
internalized oppression. Thumbs up if y'all know what that is. Thumbs up if y'all know what internalized oppression is. Don't leave me hanging. Thumbs up. You don't know, Jay? It's okay. It's okay. Y'all know I got
I
the thumbs.
don't, honey.
So this is internalized racism. That's all.
Okay.
Internalized racist stereotypes amongst ourselves.
Mm.
Amongst ourselves. It is, we are having racism. We are stereotyping
Yep.
against ourselves, guys.
Right.
Internalized oppression. Listen, if I
Mm-hmm.
hit man one more time, I'm gonna just drive myself like crazy, right? Because the mere fact is that we're saying this person did this and this community did that, and this is why I can't get ahead, but yet here we are oppressing ourselves internally. So let me give you some relation. Colorism, texturism, and featureism. What am I saying here? We are internally oppressing ourselves because the way a person looks, the way a person may be built, different physical attributes, things that make you closer to a white person, right? So basically, when you have internal oppression, the way a person looks has to be built around the oppressive belief that your physical attributes that are closer to a white person are more acceptable, more presentable, and more beautiful. Do what? I think you beautiful, Quita. You ain't got a stitch of other color in you. But yet here we are as a people, we judge based on the light versus the dark.
Yep.
We
We
judge
do.
versus curly hair and extra curly hair. We
Skinny
judge
and obese.
basis. Go ahead.
Obesity and smallness. Like we just
Yes.
judgmental. We really are.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing it to our own self. We're doing it to our own self, right? And the thing about it is, what is so sad is that we strive to feel like the closer we think we've arrived towards the other culture, we think we are better. Yes, Carolyn, sometimes we are our own worst enemy, and we are. We don't need another culture to down us and to make us feel like we are beneath when we as a people are doing it to our own self. We do it to our children. We do it to our grandchildren. We do it to
Yes.
community kids, right? I don't know if you ever witnessed anything like this, but I can honestly say that I am one of the darker ones, and I've seen it even in my family. You know what I'm saying? It's
Mm-hmm.
not right. It's not fair.
Right. I'm grateful. I don't think I've experienced that one, but we do have different shades of color. But for the most part, I will say big ups to the higher ups for keeping us together and well grounded and not being judgmental against each other by the color of our skin.
Muriel, she said, I heard people say you are pretty to be a chocolate girl.
I've heard
Exactly.
that too.
Right. So see, you heard it and you didn't even know what it
Not
was.
from my family though, but yeah, I've heard it
But
from.
from
Oh
people,
yeah.
that like what is that? What does that even mean? Even though we're oppressed by others, we still trust them more than we trust our own sometime, and that's true.
Hmm.
But for somebody to say you pretty for a chocolate girl, what in the world? Can you please tell me
That's
what does that mean?
insulting. That's
It,
insulting. It's
mm-hmm,
like saying most chocolate girls are ugly. However,
mm,
you're an exception. That's what
mm,
that means, and that's insulting to that individual. That's like telling a fat person, a skinny person, that they skinny. Like sometimes people can't help being their size, or like even a person that's you know bigger of size, like a fat person, they
mm-hmm.
can't. Maybe how do you know if they don't have a thyroid issue? How do you know if you don't know that person's personal? Why are you laughing at me? Because I said fat? I didn't mean it
I'm
like
laughing at
that.
you, Mr.
But,
Eric.
oh, I'm not surprised. Eric, please stop. Cut it out. We almost through the session. However, it's insulting because you don't know that person can have an autoimmune disease that doesn't allow them
A
to grow in
thyroid
size.
problem.
So,
A
so I don't think
thyroid
that's
problem.
a thyroid problem. Or like we was in the store the other day, one of a person walked up to my coworker and said, "Oh, how many months are you?" She had a liver enzyme thing going on. So it was like, I think that's wrong. Like, why would you even do that? You don't know that person could not be pregnant. So we got to think about what we
I'm
say and do
so
before we do
glad I'm saved, Jesus. Somebody would have walked up to me and said that. I would have said, Lord, I thank you, I'm saved. Miriam said I was always uncomfortable hearing that, and I am the darkest one in the family. Yeah,
Sure.
that that would definitely be alarming. That is again internalized oppression, because now it could cause, right? And Muriel, she's a beautiful woman, and but it could cause low self-esteem. It could cause other different things like that. So I,
Stop,
you know,
Eric.
I I'm laughing because we do this to our own self. We
We
don't
do.
need anyone else to help us out in the negative department. We have got to do better. We
We
have
tear
got
each other down.
so
Hmm.
we talked about the way, it can harm others, but it also internalized oppression can also show up in the way we act, right? Because now there is a pervasive and a false belief that aligns with whiteness will shield you from racial harm. So the whiter I talk, the whiter I act, the more professional I become, is going to shield me from racial harm. Huh. Well, it sure didn't shield Obama. It
No.
sure didn't shield Oprah. Didn't they try to sue her over some beef?
Yep.
So I think, in the way we act, we feel like, and I hear this a lot. How come when our black men make it, they go to another nationality, right? So I hear
Hmm.
that a lot, but that's not going to shield us from racial harm.
It does not.
Racism is everywhere from the top to the bottom,
Top
right?
from the bottom. Hmm.
Yeah.
It's
Carolyn
true.
said, that's because we are like crabs in a bucket, not lending a helping hand when we think we've arrived. And that is so true. As a
Yep.
community, we get somewhere, or we get out of that learned helplessness
Mhm.
that we talked about earlier, and we don't reach back. And no, you can't reach back and give to everybody, because
But
then you'll be
save
right back
somebody.
too. But there's some things that we can definitely do.
Yep.
Eric says, if you were really light back in the day, they would say, so and so could pass. Oh, yeah, you're going to be in the house. So, and they could be like, so and so could pass. And I know I have an auntie. If you seen her today, she could definitely pass for white.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's just so much that we do to our own self, that we oppress our own self, and we have got to be careful, because you know sometimes when we behave away because we think we arrived, we are disassociating ourselves
Yep.
from blackness in order to ascend in a society in one of the ways that are not even conducive to us as a people,
Right.
right? So we have to be careful on that. We can't, how do you disassociate from being black?
You can't, especially look, you can't disassociate. You're black. I'm black, color and all. And I'm proud of it. You can't disassociate from black. I mean, this history in itself, it keeps repeating itself. We cannot disassociate with being black.
Yes, yes, yes.
Black
So
and I'm proud.
so lastly, what Miriam will say, she said, so true, crabs in a bucket. The house person thought they had arrived. Yes, that is so true. They thought they had arrived. I agree. So listen, guys, you've been watching Real Talk with Ellison and Jaquita, and we have been talking about intergenerational impact of trauma, and we're going to move on to the mental health aspect of it. And there have been extensive findings findings, including Surgeon General reports that attribute racial disparities in mental health outcomes for African Americans. And there's also evidence of a link between perceived racism and adverse psychological outcome, such as increased levels of anxiety, depression, and other psychiatric history, right?
Yep.
Symptoms. So there's a lot that oppression can cause, or the
Mhm.
impact of slavery, as we talked about earlier, that can cause the mental health. So with the mental health part, Jaquita, I know that you actually work in this field as well. Doesn't this affect mental health in the Black community different?
Yes, I think
No.
it does. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, why are you laughing? Yes, I think that it does affect blacks in the mental health community. I think part of it too, a big part of it, let's be clear, paranoia.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
yes.
I I feel like a lot of our African American men, whether it's in the work field, education, incarceration, a lot of them are treated different, and over time, it can bring on paranoia. Thinking about even going back to the slavery days,
Hmm.
sometimes it's what we've seen, social media, what has been embedded into our brains. It can cause them to feel uncomfortable with being a black man in society. Then
Yeah.
it causes anger issues, but then they want to diagnose them with being bipolar. Then they want
Right.
to say, then they start hearing things, seeing things, and that is true. It happens, and I think that it does affect
Yeah.
the black man in community. I know we have Shawnetta on here. I'm gonna put her on the spot. She may have her own take of because she deals with mental illness as well,
Mhm.
licensed mental health therapist, girl. So if you have anything you would like to add to that, we would be open to hear you too.
Yes. Yes, and
But
she's
yes,
giving us
definitely.
some nuggets. So, if while we're waiting on if Shawnetta wants to respond, let's bring it to today, because you said paranoia, right? So we can bring
Mhm.
it from slavery, right? So let's
Mhm.
look at events that are shown in social media, and let's just go back as far as the 1941. We had Emmett Till. We
Emmett
had that
Till.
whole situation with that 14-year-old little boy. And then we had Rodney King in 1992, right? And then
Trayvon
we had
Martin.
Trayvon Martin. Then we had
Mhm.
George Floyd in
Mhm.
2020. And then if
Mhm.
you bring it to this year, we had Tyree Nichols. And it's just going on and on. So when people
Mhm.
saying it's over, it's not over.
It's
So, and
definitely
in
not over.
seeing these videos like this, it can be traumatic for people to watch it, because it can actually, form PTSD, because some of the stuff, listen, and listen to what I'm saying. I truly was able to watch the videos, and it it was a lot. They are alarming. They are really alarming. So if not careful, if you don't have the mental capacity, it can
Yes.
definitely give you nightmares. It can cause anger.
Mhm. Mhm.
It can cause anxiety. It can
Mhm.
cause so much mental health. So
Mhm.
we have to be aware of what we watch,
I
right?
agree 100%. We do have to. We have to watch. We have to pay attention to what we watch. We have to be able to separate
Yes.
uh, the two. We can find ourselves caught up in a conversation with people that are not of African American descent, and they can be talking about something totally different, and then we could think it's pertaining to us, and it could have nothing to do with us because we're so mentally not focused on what the question or the conversation may be at hand, that we just direct off into a different direction. And that's paranoia as well. And there goes Shawnetta.
She says, I agree, as trauma continues and the impact intensifies, re-traumatization. Yes,
It does.
re-traumatization. That is
hmm
so true. So we
But
have to be careful. We have to be careful what we let our kids watch. We have to be careful of all of these things. And let me say
hmm
this: the remnants of the settlers, right? Like the colonism, have deceived Black people into thinking that each other are the enemy, right? This was
hmm
taught to us as a people that
Right.
we are the enemy, right? But in actuality, us feeling like we are the enemy to our own selves, it actually harms the whole community, the whole nation. It's a nation thing. It's not a black thing. It harms
Hmm.
the nation as a whole, right?
Hmm.
Because our history is a part of history. And these are
Right.
the things that we have to remember, right? So
Hmm.
thank you so much, Jaquita, for joining. I know it's 8 o'clock. We're about to wrap this up. Do you have any last minute words before I say my little closing remarks?
Yes, my nugget for today is please, as people as color, stop being imprisonated in your own mind.
Mm, mm, mm. Say it one more time. Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
Stop being imprisonated in our own minds.
Stop being imprisonated. Stop being internally oppressed. How about
Right.
that?
You go, girl.
So, in closing, Black history has gone from 1 week to a month, and here we have some states attempting to take away, Black history as a whole. But I believe in using the past as a platform can address the structural problems that allow for the trauma to be inflicted in the first place. And furthermore, it can serve as the framework for healing as a collective and breaking the cycle of trauma. We cannot take history out of school. In understanding cultural context, historical trauma, and providing mental health services from a culturally informed perspective is the best thing we as the mental health community can do. We have to educate the people as a whole in order to fix our community. And with
Right.
that being said, Jaquita, I thank you so much for being here as always as my co-host. Love you much. Love you
Love you
much. Love you
too.
much. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Real Talk with Ellasin. And I just want to say next month is Women's Month, and we have some great upcoming shows for us women. Women's Month is the month of March. Thank you so much for looking and sharing and also being involved with Real Talk with Ellasin. Be blessed.